I don't remember the first time I went quiet to keep the peace, but I remember the last. My name is Ava Marine. I'm 38, and I live in Cleveland in a brick house with a maple that taps the window in the wind. If you asked my parents what I do, they'd tell you I mess with air conditioners. If you ask my accountant, she will say I sold a company that recovers heat from industrial chillers and turned it into $12.8 million and a portfolio of boring, beautiful things. If you ask me, I've been training my whole life to be underestimated. We grew up in Dayton, where my father ran a small appliance repair shop that smelled like coffee and Freon. My little brother, Jonah, learned early that a cracked smile and a guitar could get him out of anything. Our mother, Teresa, believed in second chances for Jonah and chore charts for me. I ran the books for Dad's shop in middle school and learned that some people pay on time and others pay in stories. I collected both. In our house, good behavior didn't buy attention, crisis did. Jonah forgot a project, we pulled an all-nighter. I won a regional science fair, Mom asked me to keep it down because he had a headache. Jonah dented the car, Dad called it a learning experience. I fixed the dent in the driveway in the cold, discovering I love the way metal forgives your hand when you're patient. I left for Ohio State with a scholarship and a toolbox. I studied mechanical engineering and took any co-op that would have me. I learned heat likes to run away and you can catch it if you build the right net. My professors called it energy recovery, I called it a way to make something from what everyone else threw off. At graduation, I shook hands with a man in a suit from a hospital system who wanted to harvest waste heat to warm neonatal units. I took the job, learned the constraints, and kept sketching after midnight. The sketches became a prototype, a modular heat recovery unit that clicks into existing chiller loops without tearing out walls. I built it with a friend in a cramped garage behind a Vietnamese bakery, welded until the arc left comets in my eyes, and ate baguettes at dawn because the baker thought I was his daughter. When our first hospital pilot dropped their energy bill by 12% and stabilized NICU temps, the facility's chief wiped his face with his sleeve and said, "Buy more of whatever she made." We called the company Lupin Lantern because heat is a loop and newborns are lanterns. It started in Cleveland with 2 employees and a van that coughed. In 5 years, we had contracts in 3 states and a spreadsheet that scared me. Then a conglomerate came with a number that made my co-founder cry, an acquisition, a retention bonus, a clause about staying on as a consultant. I signed. After taxes, after bonuses, after a week where I didn't sleep, I had 8 figures and a sudden fear of people who smile too wide. I stayed in Cleveland on purpose. I bought a modest house with good bones and a garage that holds secrets. I invested in small things that feed big things, a union HVAC firm, 2 fourplexes on streets I can name, a women-run fabrication shop that makes brackets like jewelry. I pay my bills on time and my crew before that. I bring empanadas to the shop on Fridays and still change my own cabin air filter because it reminds me I have hands. If you're wondering about my family, of course I helped. Quietly. When Dad's shop got behind, an envelope arrived with a cashier's check from a grateful customer. When their roof sagged after a storm, a roofer owed me a favor and owed someone else more. When Jonah's credit cards yelped, I sent a monthly transfer to my parents with a memo line that said, "Utilities," though we both know it smoothed everything else. They assumed a generous aunt. I let them. Whenever I tried to tell the truth, it turned into a sermon about humility. I could have kept it that way forever, but Thanksgiving is a holiday that loves reveals. 2 weeks before, my mother called in tears. Her back went out, and the thought of cooking for 20 made her cry. I offered to bring the food. She said they couldn't afford catering. I told her I'd saved up. She asked if I was borrowing. I said I was building something and this was part of it. She told me not to be dramatic and asked me to bring my special yams. On Thanksgiving morning I drove down I-71 with pans that smelled like butter and thyme and a cooler full of gratitude I'd worked for. We were 15 minutes into dinner when my nephew Mason decided the TV needed music. He swiped on his phone, poked at the remote, then asked, "Auntie, what's AirPlay?" He tapped a rectangle with a triangle and what flashed on the screen wasn't a playlist. It was my donor portal. I used my iPad to move money into a fund that pays for trade school scholarships. The dashboard showed a total I'd never said out loud in that house. It also displayed 3 scheduled grants and the name of a heat recovery project at a clinic I fund because the NICU still makes me breathe carefully. Silence is loud when it's full of math. Forks paused. Someone's phone slid toward a napkin. My mother squinted, then laughed, the way she laughs at bad magic. "Turn that off," she said. "It's not polite to snoop." Mason threw the remote to the couch like it burned. My father reached for the screen as if he could pull the numbers down with his hands. Jonah stood up, raised his glass, and said, "Look at you, Ava. Sitting on a pile of money while Mom and Dad drown. Family is about sharing." "Sharing is one thing," I said. "Being shaken like a tree is another." It landed like a plate on tile. My mother stood, cheeks blotched, voice thinned by outrage. "We raised you," she said. We did our best. We need help. Jonah and Maya, his wife, have a baby on the way. We're not asking for the moon. Just be fair. In our family, fair always meant Jonah gets what he wants and I get told to lower my tone. I can be quiet, but I am not small. I send you money every month, I said. I fixed your roof. I paid that hospital bill you told Aunt Lonnie about. You did that, my father said, genuinely surprised, as if anonymous miracles should stay anonymous. Jonah cleared his throat like a man preparing a speech he'd rehearsed. We talked, he said, gesturing to our parents, and we think the best way forward is to consolidate. Everyone moves into Ava's place while we look for something bigger. I'll manage things. She's alone, she doesn't need all that space. We can turn her garage into a recording studio. He'd never stepped foot in my garage. The urge to laugh scraped my teeth. Absolutely not, I said. My mother pressed her hand to her chest like I'd hit her. Ava, listen to yourself. I said. And I'm done explaining my life to people who rewrite it. I will not house you. I will not be robbed with a casserole on the table. Jonah's smile dropped like a mask. You always were selfish, he said. All brains, no heart. The rest of the night was a storm I don't need to relive. I drove home while messages hammered my phone so hard the car vibrated. Jonah's Facebook turned me into a parable about cold daughters. Cousins I hadn't seen in a decade called to explain duty to me. A family friend messaged a Bible verse about storing up treasures. I put the phone face down and watched the road for deer. Monday morning, I filed a change. The monthly transfer stops. Not as punishment. As clarity. I typed a long email about boundaries that I sent and did not read again. I told my lawyer to expect noise. He said, noise is air. We can breathe through it. I poured coffee and went to work. If that were the end of it, I'd still be telling this story. But money makes some people inventive. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, the manager at my cell phone carrier called my office. We wanted to confirm your number port, she said. It's unusual for someone to switch carriers midday. I didn't, I said. Then you'll want to come by, she said, because someone just tried with a signed letter that looks a lot like, well, you. I drove to the strip mall store with a stomach full of nails. The clerk slid a copy of the authorization across the counter. The signature was mine if you don't know my handwriting. The letterhead was my company's old logo. The attached ID belonged to a woman I recognized, Maya, my sister-in-law. She sat in a chair by the window, scrolling. When she looked up and saw me, she did a bad job of pretending to be startled. Oh, she said. Ava. Jonah asked me to. It's for the baby's family plan, for the baby who can't hold a phone. I said. Maya, this is a felony. Her eyes filled and spilled while her mouth stayed dry. We needed a code to get into your bank, she said, very soft, like honesty could undo it. Just to see. Just to prove. Prove what? I asked. That I owe you my piece? That I'm a tree you can shake? The clerk swallowed and looked anywhere but at us. She had already flagged the attempt as fraud and called loss prevention. I could have pressed charges. I didn't. I asked them to add a port freeze and pin to my line that even my future self will forget. I told Maya to tell Jonah to leave my life alone. She muttered, we're family, as if she was stating a spell. That night my home security app lit up like December. A device I didn't own appeared on my network and vanished. The porch camera caught a dark sedan circling slow. A small tracker pinged my phone location the way a mosquito seeks skin. I found the AirTag under my bumper, wrapped in painter's tape, damp with road grit. I held it like a tooth I'd raised. I walked inside, put it on a plate on the kitchen counter, and called the police. 2 officers came, one older, one with a braid and a voice like granite. They logged the device, took my statement, and checked my locks with more care than my father ever gave a door. If they come back, the braided one said, call us. Don't open anything. Family escalates to felony fast. It did. 3 nights later, I heard metal at the back door. Not a knock. The sound of a small decision becoming a big one. I looked at the camera feed and saw a man bent at the lock, shoulders hunched, a baseball cap low, the impatience of someone who believes he deserves what's on the other side. I didn't recognize him. I did recognize who he belonged to, one of Jonah's friends, the kind who always owes someone. He had a little kit of pics he didn't know how to use. I stood in the dark and dialed 911. The braided officer answered my address like she de-memorized it. Sirens do a specific thing to the night, it opens, then holds its breath. The man worked at the lock until the flash of a cruiser washed him in blue. He ran. They caught him a block away because running on ice is a moral fable. Charges were an option. I used a different tool, a civil protection order that named Jonah and Maya explicitly and extended to anyone acting on their behalf or request. My lawyer filed it like a man who has done it before. The judge signed it faster than I expected. Jonah texted a long paragraph about treachery and therapy and me being brainwashed by rich people. I blocked the number and printed the order and taped one copy inside my electrical panel because that's where you go when things break. For a while after, I lived in a new quiet. It wasn't the old one, where I swallowed to keep the room peaceful. It was a quiet with edges. I slept. I woke early. I visited the shop where I mentor apprentices and taught them how to feel heat with the back of their hand so they donned burn the front. I remembered the hospital NICU pilot and sent another grant to a clinic that can afford better equipment. I ate soup in my kitchen and stopped looking at the door. My mother didn't stop. She sent long emails with subject lines like your soul and family duty and this is MOM as if I might forget. She said she was praying for my cold heart. She said my money was a test and I was failing. She said I was humiliating Jonah, who was doing his best. She said the baby needed a nursery. I wrote back one sentence, my money is not a community attic. She replied with a verse about prodigals that she'd never read to Jonah. Dad called once. He said, we went wrong somewhere. I said, not where you think. He sighed so heavily I could hear his shirt move and hung up. At night, I listened to the maple tapping the glass and tried not to translate it into all the things unsaid. People ask if I regret any of it. I regret trying to be a weather system for a family that loves storms. I regret all the Sundays I left hungry because I swallowed every sentence that might have kept me fed. I do not regret the no. It's a complete sentence for a reason. Something shifted in the spring. A package arrived with no return address and my name written in someone else's careful hand. Inside, a stack of apology cards, not filled out, not sent, just purchased and left blank like a dare. Tucked between them, a note, we didn't know how to say it. No signature. No plan. No accountability. It felt like the opposite of a bomb, a little box that tried to take the air out of the room. I recycled the cards and kept the note. Not because I forgave it. Because I wanted a record of what almost looks like. I also made a different record. I called a community college in Dayton and set up a scholarship for HVAC apprentices who can afford tools. It covers a decent meter, a good set of gauges, a crescent wrench that won't strip, and boots that won't split in January. I named it after no one, not me, not my parents, not my brother. The dean asked what to call it, and I said, the Keep Your Hands Warm Fund. She laughed, then cried. I mailed the check and slept like the first night after a fever breaks. By summer, the order held. The sedan stopped circling. The AirTag was an anecdote. The man with the lockpicks didn't reappear. Jonah's Facebook found a new villain. My mother's emails got shorter, then stopped. I took a road trip to Lake Erie and sat on the pier with coffee while gulls argued in voices that sound like keyboards. I thought about the hospital NICU. I thought about the bakery behind my first garage. I thought about my father's hands black with grease and pride when a dryer hummed again. I thought about what to keep and what to let go. When the leaves began to turn, I planted a dogwood in the backyard where the maple can watch it. The hole looked like a mouth. I set the tree and filled the space around it with soil, pressing down so the roots could feel someone believed in them. I poured a bucket of water that shone like new metal. I wiped my hands on my jeans and laughed alone, not because anything was funny, but because the sound of myself in the open felt like a proof. If you are listening and your family has taught you to be small, I won't tell you to run. Some of us can't. I won't tell you to fight. Some wars cost more than they return. I will tell you to build your loop and lantern, the system that keeps what you make from cooling into nothing and the light you carry so you can see what is yours. I will tell you to lock the doors you need to, not to keep love out, but to keep yourself in. I will tell you there is no moral prize for letting people use your heart like a spare room. There's a photo on my desk of my hands holding a wrench with a radiator in the background. I keep it there because it reminds me who did the work. My name isn't on the wrench. It's on the callus. If you think that's selfish, I promise you have never fed a room and had someone ask if you were borrowing to do it. I kept the maple. I kept the shop. I kept the habit of paying first and arguing later. I did not keep Thanksgiving. I made a different holiday, Tool Day in October, where we lay out meters and gauges and let new apprentices pick theirs up and feel the weight. I grill in the alley and tell them the truth. Some people will only love the version of you that needs them. Do the work anyway. Build something boring and beautiful. When someone tries your door at midnight, that doesn't make you mean. It makes you a homeowner. If this story found you at a table where you're cutting yourself into polite bites, you can get up. You don't have to slam your chair. You can simply stand, put your napkin down, and tell your feet they are invited somewhere else. And if you needed to hear someone say no out loud, here it is: no to being shaken like a tree. No to a garage you never saw turned into a stage for someone else. No to versions of help that invade and rename. Yes to heat you're allowed to keep. Yes to the lantern you aim where you choose. I won't be at Thanksgiving in Dayton. If they ask why, tell them I finally learned to keep my hands warm. Then tell them I wish them a working furnace and a door that locks from the inside. It's cold out there, and I am finished pretending I don't feel it.